I heard her voice before I saw her face standing in my backyard on a Friday evening. I was about to head inside when words drifted over the fence between our properties. I wish someone loved me like that. The statement hung in the warm summer air, quiet but heavy with longing. I froze my hand still on the back door handle. Through the gap in the hedges separating our yards, I could see my neighbor sitting alone on her patio. Sophia Martinez had moved in 6 months ago, and in all that time, we barely exchanged more than polite waves and quick hellos about the weather. She kept to herself, always alone. Tonight was different, though. Her neighbors 2 houses down were throwing their 20th anniversary party. Music and laughter spilled into the evening, string lights glowing warm against the darkening sky. But Sophia was there by herself, a glass of wine in her hand, watching the celebration from a distance, like she was looking through a window at a life she couldn't quite reach. I should have gone inside, should have pretended I didn't hear anything. But something about the sadness in those words stopped me. My phone had just rung a few minutes earlier. It was my younger brother Miguel calling to share good news about a promotion he'd been chasing for over a year. I congratulated him, told him how proud I was, how much he deserved this win after all his hard work. We talked for maybe 10 minutes, laughing about old memories and making plans to meet up soon. When I hung up, I felt good, happy for him, happy that we still had that closeness even though life kept us busy. That's when I noticed Sophia watching. She must have heard my side of the conversation, heard the warmth in my voice, the easy way family can make you smile without even trying. And then she'd whispered those words into her wine glass, not knowing I was still standing there in the shadows of my yard. For a moment, I considered slipping inside quietly. We weren't friends. We were barely acquaintances. Whatever loneliness she was feeling wasn't my business, but my feet moved before my brain caught up. I walked toward the fence, stopping a few feet away. "Beautiful evening," I said, keeping my voice casual and light. She looked up startled. For a second, I thought she might be embarrassed. Might realize I'd overheard her, but she just nodded, taking a small sip from her glass. "It is." Silence stretched between us. Not quite comfortable, but not hostile either. Just 2 neighbors acknowledging each other existed. The party music swelled in the background. Someone laughing loudly at a joke I couldn't hear. "Your brother sounds happy," she said suddenly. So, she had been listening. I nodded. "Yeah, he just got promoted. He's been working toward this for a long time." "That's nice." Her voice was softer now, distant. "It's nice that you 2 are close like that he wanted to share his good news with you right away." There was something underneath her words, a story she wasn't telling. I leaned against the fence post, giving her space, but staying present. "We didn't used to be," I admitted. "I spent years traveling for work, barely home, always too busy for phone calls. Almost lost that connection completely. Had to make a real choice to change things." She looked at me, then really looked like she was trying to figure out if I was being honest or just making conversation. "What made you change?" It was a fair question. I thought about it for a moment, wanting to give her a real answer. I realized I was building a life that looked good on paper but felt empty. Success and money and promotions are great, but they don't call you just to say they're proud of you. They don't remember the inside jokes from when you were kids. I was winning at work and losing at everything else. Sophia was quiet, running her finger along the rim of her wine glass. From the party, someone called out for everyone to gather for a toast. We both glanced toward the lights and laughter, then back at each other. "I'm good at building walls," she said finally. "Really good at it. I've been doing it for so long, I'm not sure I remember how to stop." Her honesty caught me off guard. This was more than small talk, more than neighbor politeness. This was real. "Why do you want to stop?" I asked. She laughed, but it was bitter, sad. "Because sitting alone on a Friday night listening to other people celebrate love while I drink wine by myself is getting old." She paused, then added so quietly I almost missed it. "I wish someone loved me like that, like your brother loves you, like those people at that party love each other. I wish I knew what that felt like." My heart did something strange in my chest. Before I could second-guess myself, I took a step closer to the fence. Close enough that she had to tilt her head up slightly to meet my eyes. "Maybe someone could," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "If you'd let them see past these walls you've built." Her breath caught. I could see her eyes widen slightly in the fading light. Could see the exact moment my words landed. For several long seconds, neither of us moved. The party continued in the background. A dog barked somewhere down the street. Car drove past, but in that small space between our yards, everything felt suspended. "I don't know how to do that," she finally whispered back. "Neither do I admitted. But maybe we could figure it out together." She stared at me like I just suggested something impossible and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Then slowly the smallest smile touched the corner of her mouth. "You don't even know me." "No," I agreed. "But I'd like to if you'd let me." The smile grew just a fraction. "That sounds scary." "Probably," I said. "But sitting alone, wishing for something different sounds scarier." She considered this, then set her wine glass down on the small table beside her chair. Standing up, she walked to her side of the fence until only a few feet separated us. Up close, I could see that her eyes were hazel. Could see the tiredness there, but also something else. Hope maybe, or curiosity. "I'm Sophia," she said, offering her hand across the fence. I took it. Her fingers warm despite the cooling evening air. "I know. I'm Ryan." "I know," she echoed with a real smile. This time we stood there, hands clasped over a wooden fence while the world went on around us. And somehow I knew that this moment, this simple exchange, was the beginning of something neither of us could predict, but both of us needed. Saturday morning arrived with sunshine and the sound of birds arguing in the trees. I was outside by 7, coffee in hand, watering the plants along my back fence. Normally Sophia's house stayed quiet until late morning on weekends. Curtains drawn, no signs of life. But today was different. I heard her back door open just as I finished with the roses. When I glanced over, she was stepping onto her patio in yoga pants and a t-shirt, her dark hair twisted up in a clip. She had a mug in her hands, and when she saw me, she didn't duck back inside like usual. Instead, she waved. Actually waved. Not the quick, polite gesture we'd exchanged for months, but a real one that lasted more than a second. I waved back, feeling oddly pleased. "Morning," I called over. "Morning," she replied, walking toward the fence. "You're up early." Old habits, even on weekends, my brain turns on at 6 o'clock. I held up my coffee mug. "You couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about last night." She paused, looking slightly embarrassed about our conversation. I set down the watering can and moved closer to the fence. "Good thoughts or regrets?" "Both, maybe." She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I don't usually tell strangers I'm lonely and wish I knew how to let people in." "We're not strangers anymore," I pointed out. "We're neighbors who've had at least one honest conversation. That's something." She smiled at that, a genuine one that changed her whole face. Fair point. We stood there in comfortable quiet for a moment, the morning sun warming everything around us. A lawnmower started up a few houses down. Someone's sprinkler system kicked on with a sputter. "So," Sophia said, seeming to gather courage, "you mentioned you took a break from work. What did you used to do?" "Consulting business strategy for companies trying to expand or restructure. It paid well and kept me on planes 3 weeks out of every month." I shrugged, burned out hard about a year ago and decided to step back, figure out what actually matters. "And what does matter?" "I mean this," I said, gesturing around being home, having time to actually water plants and answer when my brother calls, knowing my neighbors' names instead of hotel room numbers. Sophia looked down at her coffee. "I'm a senior architect at Chun and Associates in downtown San Francisco. Been there 8 years. Climbed the ladder fast. Everyone thinks I have it all figured out. But you don't. Not even close." She met my eyes. "I moved here after ending a 5-year engagement. Thought a fresh start in a new neighborhood would help, but I just brought all my walls with me and rebuilt them here. I wanted to ask what happened with the engagement, but sensed it was too soon. Instead, I said, walls keep things out, but they also keep you trapped inside." "Wow, That's surprisingly deep for 7 in the morning. But she was smiling when she said it. I have my moments, I grinned. Usually before my second cup of coffee. Actually, she laughed and the sound made something warm spread through my chest. This was nice, easy, different from last night's heavy honesty, but good in its own way. Would you want to have coffee out here tomorrow morning, too? Sophia asked suddenly, like the words escaped before she could stop them. I mean, if you're up anyway, and I'm up anyway, we could just die like that, I said quickly, not wanting her to second-guess the invitation. Same time, same time. She looked relieved and pleased and nervous all at once. The next few weeks fell into a pattern I started looking forward to. Weekend mornings became our time. We'd stand on opposite sides of the fence, coffee mugs in hand, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her work, about the stress of managing big commercial projects, and dealing with clients who wanted champagne designs on beer budgets. I shared stories from my consulting days, the absurd meetings, and impossible deadlines. But we talked about other things, too. Books we'd read, places we wanted to travel, embarrassing childhood memories that made us laugh until our coffee got cold. Sophia mentioned one Saturday that she'd been avoiding the neighborhood book club despite multiple invitations. The woman who runs it, Mrs. Kim from the corner house, keeps asking, but joining feels like committing to being social, and I'm not sure I'm ready for that. What's the worst that could happen? I asked. You read a book and talk about it with some neighbors. If it's terrible, you don't go back. She considered this. When you put it that way, it sounds less scary. Most things are less scary when you actually try them instead of just worrying about them. Is that more wisdom from before your second coffee? That's wisdom from years of avoiding things that scared me and realizing I wasted a lot of time. 2 weeks later, Sophia mentioned she'd gone to book club. How was it? I asked. Actually, kind of nice. Mrs. Kim is sweet, and there were snacks. Good snacks. She smiled. They picked next month's book, and I said I'd come again. I felt proud of her, which was maybe strange given that we'd only been having fence conversations for a few weeks, but it mattered. She was trying. Around late June, things shifted again. I was cleaning out my garage on a Sunday afternoon, sorting through boxes I'd been ignoring since moving in. Sophia was in her backyard attempting to assemble what looked like a very complicated patio furniture set. Pieces were spread everywhere. Instructions fluttered in the breeze. She was frowning at an Allen wrench like it had personally offended her. Need help? I called over. She looked up, frustrated. I've built entire buildings, but apparently a simple chair is beyond my abilities. Want a second pair of hands? She hesitated only a moment before nodding. That would actually be amazing. I walked around through the side gate she opened for me. This was the first time I'd been in her yard. The first time we'd been on the same side of the fence. Her space was neat but plain, like she'd moved in and never quite finished making it home. Together, we tackled the furniture. Took 2 hours, several wrong turns, and a lot of laughing when we had to take apart a section because we'd missed a step. But eventually, a complete patio set stood in her backyard. I couldn't have done that alone, Sophia admitted, testing one of the chairs. Thank you. Anytime. I meant it. She offered me a beer and we sat in the newly assembled chairs, watching the afternoon sun filter through the trees. Felt natural, comfortable, like we'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. Can I ask you something? Sophia said after a while. Sure. Why did you say what you said that night about someone maybe loving me if I let them pass my walls? I turned to look at her. Because it was true, and because I know what it's like to feel like you've built a life that looks right but feels wrong. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to see past the surface. She held my gaze for a long moment, something unspoken passing between us. Then she smiled softly and took another sip of her beer, and we sat together in comfortable silence as the summer afternoon stretched on around us. Months passed, and what started as morning coffee talks evolved into something more. We'd moved beyond the fence, literally and figuratively. Most evenings found us having dinner together, either at her place or mine. The neighborhood had noticed, too. Mrs. Garcia would smile knowingly when she saw us together. Little Emma, would wave enthusiastically whenever Sophia was around. We'd become a fixture in each other's lives, and somewhere along the way, friendship had deepened into something neither of us had planned, but both of us wanted. Then came a Tuesday morning in early fall when everything shifted. I was trimming the hedges between our yards when I heard Sophia pacing on her patio, her voice tight with stress on a phone call. She ended it and sat down hard on her deck chair, head in her hands. "Everything okay?" I called over, setting down my shears. She looked up, and I could see the worry in her eyes. "My firm wants an answer by Friday. About Seattle." I walked to the fence. "That's the partnership you mentioned. Head of the Northwest Division. My own team, major projects, everything I've worked 12 years for." She stood up and came closer. "But it means leaving permanently." The word hit me harder than I expected. We'd never defined what we were to each other, but the thought of her being across the state felt wrong. "What do you want to do?" I asked carefully. "I don't know any more," she admitted. 3 months ago, I would have already packed. But now, before she could finish, her neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, called out from her garden, "Sophia, dear, are you really leaving us? I heard you talking." Within an hour, half the block knew. By evening, the question started. Old Mr. Rodriguez stopped me while I was checking my mail. "You two have been spending a lot of time together. People are talking." "We're friends," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Friends don't look at each other the way you two do." "Just saying, son, but folks are wondering if all this neighborly closeness is making her turn down good opportunities." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my back steps staring at Sophia's dark house. Around midnight, her patio light came on. She stepped outside in sweatpants and an old college sweatshirt holding a mug of tea. "Can't sleep either?" she asked across the fence. "Too much thinking," I admitted. She was quiet for a moment. "Someone at work today said, I'm getting too comfortable, too soft." They asked if I could still handle the tough negotiations, the difficult clients. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing." "Because I started wondering if they were right," she set her mug down. "I used to work 70-hour weeks. I never took vacation. I fought for every project like my life depended on it. And now I'm going to book clubs and having coffee with my neighbor every morning." Her voice cracked slightly. "Maybe I am losing my edge." I stood up and walked to the fence. "Do you want to know what I see?" She looked at me waiting. "I see someone who's finally living instead of just surviving. You're still brilliant at your job. You just added something to your life besides work. But what if they're right? What if letting people in makes me weak?" The vulnerability in her question made my chest ache. "Sophia, do you remember why you became an architect?" She blinked, surprised by the question. "I wanted to design spaces where people could build lives, where they could feel safe and happy. And you can't do that if you've never experienced it yourself." I said gently, "You've spent years building walls, not homes. Maybe it's time to understand the difference." She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "My review meeting is Thursday. They want to discuss my recent performance concerns before I give my answer about Seattle. You'll be amazing." I told her, "Just be yourself. The real you, not the armor you used to wear." Thursday afternoon, I was working at my laptop when I heard a car door slam. Through my window, I saw Sophia get out, her expression unreadable. She walked straight to my front door and knocked. When I opened it, she stood there in her professional suit, looking exhausted but determined. "I need to show you something," she said. I followed her to her house. She pulled out her laptop and opened a presentation. "This is what I pitched to my firm today." The slides showed a revolutionary proposal for a neighborhood-focused architecture program. Her firm would partner with communities across California, designing affordable, beautiful spaces that brought people together. It combined commercial success with social impact. "They initially called me in to discuss concerns about my performance," she explained. "They said clients were complaining I was asking too many questions about their needs instead of just selling them expensive designs." "What did you say?" I showed them this. I explained that understanding what people actually need makes better architecture, that community-focused design is a future, not a weakness. She pulled up another slide, showing potential revenue projections. I backed it up with numbers, market research, everything, and a small smile crossed her face. They loved it. They want me to pilot the program here, not in Seattle. They're creating a new position for me, Director of Community Development. Relief flooded through me, but I tried to keep my voice steady. So you're staying? That's not why I turned down Seattle, she said firmly. I pitched this program because it's the right thing to do, not to avoid leaving. If they'd said no, I would have turned down Seattle anyway. Why? She stepped closer. Because somewhere between book clubs and morning coffee, I realized something. I wasn't running toward a partnership in Seattle. I was running away from the possibility of building something real here. Before I could respond, there was a knock on her door. She opened it to find Mrs. Garcia, Mr. Rodriguez, and several other neighbors standing there. "We heard you might be leaving," Mrs. Garcia said. "We wanted you to know we'd miss you." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not going anywhere. Actually, I have something to share with all of you." She invited them in and explained her new project. The neighborhood would be her first community partnership. She wanted to redesign the old playground, create a proper community garden, add covered gathering spaces. "We'd love your input," she said. "This only works if it's what you actually want, not what I think you should want." The neighbors lit up with ideas and questions. Mr. Rodriguez suggested a covered area for weekend chess games. Mrs. Garcia wanted raised garden beds for people with mobility issues. Emma's mom asked about a safe bike path. I watched Sophia take notes, ask follow-up questions, sketch quick ideas. This was her edge, just redirected. She hadn't lost her professional brilliance. She gained something more valuable, purpose. After everyone left, Sophia collapsed on her couch, exhausted but smiling. That was terrifying. "You were perfect," I said, sitting beside her. "I've never done anything like this before, asking a community what they want instead of telling them what they need. How does it feel?" She thought about it, like I finally understand what I've been designing all these years. I was creating spaces for an idea of people, not real ones. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Sophia turned to me, her expression serious. "There's something I need to tell you." My heart picked up speed. "Okay." When I was trying to decide about Seattle, I realized something. She took my hand. "I've been falling in love with you, Ryan. Maybe since that first night at the fence. And that terrifies me because I've spent so long protecting myself from feeling this way." I squeezed her hand, hardly daring to breathe. "I've been in love with you for months," I admitted. "I just didn't want to push you before you were ready." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I think I'm ready now." I leaned forward and kissed her softly, years of walls finally crumbling completely. When we pulled apart, she was smiling wider than I'd ever seen. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we figure it out together," I said, just like we promised that first night. The next few weeks were the happiest I could remember. Sophia and I stopped pretending we were just neighbors who happened to spend all our time together. We were together officially, and the neighborhood celebrated it like they'd been waiting for this all along. Mrs. Garcia brought us a homemade pie. Emma drew us a picture of two stick figures holding hands across a fence. Even Mr. Rodriguez gave me an approving nod and said, "About time, son." Sophia threw herself into the community development project with an energy I'd never seen. She was brilliant, passionate, completely in her element. We'd spend evenings going over designs, me offering thoughts from a practical standpoint while she sketched possibilities. Felt like a true partnership, both of us contributing something valuable. Then one Friday morning in November, everything shifted again. I was pretending to work on my laptop, but really I was watching Sophia's driveway through my window. At 10 o'clock, an expensive silver car pulled up. A tall man in a designer suit got out, holding 2 coffee cups from the fancy downtown cafe. My stomach tightened. I recognized him from the photo Sophia had once shown me. Marcus, her ex-fiancé. Sophia stepped out to meet him on her porch. Even from my house, I could see she dressed carefully, professional, but not trying too hard. They sat in her patio chairs, the ones where we'd shared dozens of conversations. I forced myself to look away to focus on my actual work, but my mind wouldn't cooperate. This man represented everything Sophia used to want. Success, status, the life she planned before moving here. An hour passed, then another. I made lunch. I didn't eat. Finally, around 1 o'clock, I heard voices. Through my window, I saw them standing by his car. He was gesturing, talking intently. Sophia had her arms crossed. Then he reached for her hand. My stomach dropped. I turned away from the window, unable to watch. This was none of my business. Whatever was happening between Sophia and her ex was her choice to make. I heard his car door close. The engine started. I risked a glance and saw him driving away. Sophia stood in her driveway watching him leave. She turned and looked directly at my house. Our eyes met through the window. She raised one hand in a small wave, then walked inside her house. I waited for her to come over to explain. An hour passed to nothing. By evening, I couldn't stand it anymore. I walked to her door and knocked. She opened it immediately like she'd been waiting. "Can we talk?" I asked. She nodded and stepped outside, closing the door behind her. We sat on her porch steps, the same spot where we'd shared so many conversations. "His name is Marcus," she started. "We were together for 4 years, engaged for 6 months before I broke it off. What happened today? He heard about Seattle through mutual colleagues. He came to tell me I was making a mistake." She picked at a thread on her jeans. "He said I'm throwing away my career for some fantasy of small-town life. That I've changed too much. Become someone he doesn't recognize." "What did you tell him?" "That he's right. I'm not the same person." She looked at me. The woman he knew worked constantly. Never let anyone close. Measured her worth by professional achievements. That's who he fell in love with. "And you're not her anymore." "I don't want to be her anymore." Sophia's voice was firm. "Marcus offered me a job at his firm in Los Angeles. Senior partner, my own division, double what I'm making now." My heart sank. "That's incredible." I turned him down. I looked at her sharply. "Why?" "Because he doesn't see me. He sees the architect, the professional, the woman who will work 70 hours a week and never ask for more." She turned to face me fully. "You want to know what he said when I told him about my community development project?" He laughed. "Said it was cute that I wanted to help neighborhoods, but real architects work on skyscrapers and museums. He's an idiot." I said before I could stop myself. Sophia smiled. "Maybe, but he also helped me understand something. I didn't just turn down Seattle or Los Angeles. I chose this life. Actively, deliberately chose it. No regrets. Not even one." She stood up. "But there's something else." Marcus asked me why I really stayed. "If there was someone, what did you say?" She looked down at me, her expression soft but serious. I told him the truth. That I met someone who sees past the suits and the job titles. Someone who taught me that building a life is just as important as building a career. My heart was pounding. "Sophia, I'm not finished." She interrupted gently. "I also told him that I know exactly where things are going with you, that we're building something real together, and that for the first time in my life, I'm not scared of that." I stood up, closing the distance between us. "I love you," I said clearly. "I'm in love with you, and I want to build this life with you. Whatever that looks like." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "I love you too, so much it sometimes scares me, but the good kind of scared." I pulled her into my arms and kissed her, and everything else fell away. When we finally broke apart, she was laughing softly. "Marcus said I'd come to my senses eventually." She said that this was all just a phase. And what do you think? I think I've finally come to my senses. I just had to lose them first to find what actually matters. We stood there on her porch as the sun set, holding each other while the neighborhood settled into evening. And I knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where we both belonged. The community project moved forward through late fall and into winter. Sophia was busier than ever, but it was a different kind of busy. She'd come home energized instead of drained, excited to tell me about the day's progress. We'd become a true team, not just in our relationship, but in the work. I helped coordinate with contractors, and handle the business side while she focused on design and community input. Then December arrived, and with it unexpected pressure. Sophia's phone wouldn't stop buzzing one morning, and I could see the stress on her face even from my kitchen window. She was pacing her living room, gesturing wildly while talking to someone. When she finally came outside for air, I walked over to meet her. "Everything okay?" I asked, though I could tell it wasn't. She let out a long breath. "My firm just lost a major client, the one I've been working with remotely for months. They said they need someone on site full-time, someone they can meet with face-to-face whenever they want." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "That's not even the worst part." She rubbed her temples. "My boss called right after. He's questioning whether the remote arrangement is working. He said, maybe I made a mistake turning down Seattle." The words hung between us like a dark cloud. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. I fought so hard to build this life here," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "And now it feels like it's falling apart." Over the next week, I watched Sophia throw herself into her work with an intensity that worried me. She'd be at her desk before sunrise, still there long after dark. Our morning coffee talks disappeared. Our evening dinners stopped when I knocked on her door with food I'd made. She barely looked up from her computer. "I can't write now," she said, distracted. "I have to prove this can work." I understood the pressure she was under, but I also saw her rebuilding the walls we'd worked so hard to tear down. The neighborhood noticed, too. Mrs. Garcia mentioned that Sophia had missed book club. Emma's mom said Sophia hadn't returned calls about the school fundraiser design. I found myself caught in the middle, making excuses for her while privately worrying she was slipping back into old patterns. Then came a breaking point. Sophia had volunteered to host the neighborhood holiday party planning meeting at her place months ago. Everyone gathered in her living room, but the warmth that used to fill her home felt absent. She was polite but distant, professional instead of personal. Halfway through discussing decoration ideas, her phone rang. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. "I have to take this," she said, disappearing into her office. The room fell silent. People exchanged uncomfortable looks. After 10 minutes, Mrs. Garcia suggested we reschedule. Everyone filed out quietly, and I stayed behind, waiting. When Sophia emerged, she looked defeated. "That was my boss again. He wants me to come to the main office next week for an evaluation. He's bringing up the Seattle position again, saying maybe it's time to reconsider." I wanted to comfort her, but I also needed to be honest. "Sophia, you're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Building walls, pushing everyone away. You missed book club, ignored neighbors, canceled our dinners. You're handling this the old way." She sank onto her couch. "I'm just trying to keep my career from falling apart by sacrificing everything else." I sat beside her, careful to keep my voice gentle. "Do you remember what you told Marcus about choosing this life? That was before everything started falling apart." She whispered, "It's not falling apart. It's just hard right now. There's a difference." I took her hand. "But you don't have to handle it alone anymore. That's what you've been forgetting." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why are you still here?" "I've been terrible to everyone for weeks. I canceled our plans, ignored the neighborhood, buried myself in work." "You should be angry." "I'm not angry," I said honestly. "I'm just waiting for what? For you to remember that you're not alone in this anymore." She broke then, tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared. What if I can't make it work? What if I have to choose between everything I've built here and my career?" "Then we'll figure it out together," I said, pulling her close. "But you don't have to decide anything tonight. You just have to stop shutting people out." The next morning, something changed. I woke to find Sophia on my porch with 2 coffee cups and a nervous smile. "I'm sorry," she said simply, "for disappearing, for pushing everyone away, for forgetting what actually matters." We sat on my porch steps as the sun came up, and she told me everything. The pressure from her firm, the fear of failure, the old instinct to handle everything alone that she thought she'd overcome. I convinced myself that asking for help was weak. She admitted that if I couldn't prove I could do this on my own, then I didn't deserve any of it. That's the old Sophia talking. I pointed out gently, I know, and I don't want to be her anymore. That afternoon, Sophia did something brave. She called an emergency neighborhood meeting and apologized. She explained what was happening with her work, admitted she'd been handling it poorly, and asked if anyone had ideas. The response surprised both of us. Mrs. Garcia's husband worked in commercial real estate and offered to connect Sophia with local clients. Emma's mom, who ran a marketing firm, suggested they collaborate on a project. Even Mr. Rodriguez mentioned his company was looking for architectural consultation. We take care of our own here. Mrs. Garcia said firmly, "You've become part of this community, Sophia. Let us help." By the end of December, Sophia had landed 2 local clients through neighborhood connections. They weren't as big as the one she'd lost, but they were steady and allowed her to maintain her remote arrangement. When she went to her evaluation meeting, she brought a portfolio showing her new projects and a proposal for expanding the firm's remote consultation services. Her boss was impressed. Instead of pushing Seattle again, he agreed to a trial period for her new model. It wasn't perfect, and there were no guarantees, but it was a chance. The holiday party finally happened at Sophia's house in late December. As I helped her hang decorations, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I almost ruined everything," she said quietly. "I almost let fear win." "But you didn't," I reminded her. "You asked for help instead. That's growth." Later that night, after most neighbors had left, we stood in her kitchen cleaning up. She was washing dishes while I dried, moving in comfortable rhythm. "You know what I realized," she said suddenly. "When I was engaged before, I never would have admitted to Marcus that I was struggling. I would have pretended everything was fine until it exploded. What's different now?" I asked, though I hoped I knew the answer. She turned to face me, soap suds still on her hands. "With you, I don't have to pretend. Even when I tried to push you away, you just waited. You didn't fix it for me or judge me for struggling. You just stayed." I set down the dish towel and stepped closer. "I'll always stay, Sophia." Through the hard parts and the easy ones, she reached up and touched my face, her wet hand leaving droplets on my cheek. "I love you," she whispered. "I don't know when it happened exactly, but I do. I love you." My heart felt too big for my chest. "I love you, too. More than I knew was possible." She smiled through tears, and I pulled her close, holding her while the last remnants of the party sat forgotten on counters. Outside, the December night was cool and clear. But inside, everything felt warm and right and exactly where it was supposed to be. Winter gave way to early spring, and life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Sophia's remote work arrangement had proven successful, and her firm officially made her position permanent. The community project was progressing beautifully with construction set to begin in April. We'd found our balance both as individuals and as a couple. Everything felt stable, secure, right? Then came an unexpected morning in late March. The knock on my door was urgent and early. I opened it to find a man in an expensive suit standing on my porch, looking uncomfortable and determined at the same time. My stomach sank as I recognized him from photos. "You must be Ryan," he said. "I'm Marcus, Sophia's ex-fiancé." I kept my voice steady despite my racing heart. "She's not here. She's at a client meeting in San Francisco." "I know.